If you want to start reading or get back into reading, but it feels intimidating, overwhelming, or like you're doing something wrong, you're not alone. Reading is one of those hobbies that at times can feel extremely hard to get into. As an avid reader myself, I felt the same way when I started my reading journey again. I had no idea how to jump back into reading books after having not picked a book up for so many years. It felt scary. It felt like I didn't have the necessary tools or knowledge or bandwidth or time to do that. And I really didn't know how I was going to approach it. And I kind of wish I had watched a video like this video today to get me started on that process and sort of take the pressure off. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to try and make this as informal as possible while still giving you the information you need. We're going to break down how to get back into reading or how to start reading, what supplies you'll need, how to read in different ways, how to make reading a consistent hobby, and how to do all of that without breaking the bank. This is going to be a very low pressure, conversational, beginner friendly guide that will be perfect for someone who's never really read as an adult, or for someone who used to read a lot and is trying to get back into the swing of things, trying to get out of a reading slump and start reading a little more consistently. Before we start the video, if this is your first time on my channel, I'm Sugar. I love to read, I love cozy hobbies, and on this channel, I am sharing my love and my passion for books and all things cozy. I talk about the books that I'm reading. I do reading vlogs, as well as I'm going to start incorporating in cozy vlogs where I'm baking or doing creative hobbies that I'm enjoying and sort of rediscovering that passion and creative side of myself. If you find any of that intriguing and want to learn more about me, or if this video helps you, subscribe to my channel and like this video so that the algorithm recommends my videos to you again, and we can sort of grow on this creative journey together. So you're going to need a starter kit when you are starting out on your adult reading journey. Whether you are just starting reading for the first time or you want to get back into it, there are a few things that you're going to need. Actually, there's only one thing that you're going to need, and that's a book. That's it. You need a book. That's how you become a reader. All you need is a book. However, of course, like with any hobby, there are some side quests, some little side projects that you can include in your reading journey if that's something that you're interested in. I will touch on most of these later on in the video if you are interested in diving into your reading a little bit deeper and analyzing it more than just a surface level read. But again, none of these things are necessary. They can just add to the experience if that's something that you're interested in. If you are just starting out as a reader, I recommend not getting down into the nitty-gritty with all of these supplies and starting with just a book, because it takes a little while to sort of hone your reading habits and understand what works best for you, and trying to do all this extra stuff that's really just noise can sometimes hinder the reading experience and your reading progress. Now that you know you want to read and all you need is a book, you have to figure out what way you're going to read it, what format you're going to read that book in. Of course, there are three major formats. You have a physical book, then you have ebooks, which can be read on any electronic device, and audiobooks, which you listen to. Audiobooks do count as reading. All of these formats have their own merits. For some people, they like to have a physical book in their hand that they can hold and touch and look at the words of. They like to write on the pages and mark them up and just feel a book in their hands. They like the smell of a book. Other people prefer reading on a tablet or a Kindle or some type of e-reader because they're able to bring it with them wherever they go. And they also find that their eyes adjust better to that electronic screen and they can read more quickly when they're not seeing the progress right in front of them, wondering how much of the book they have left. Other people do much better with audiobooks that are so much more accessible for a lot of people, especially people who struggle with focus. An audiobook is a great way to sort of ease back into reading or ease into reading for the first time, where you can incorporate it into other aspects of your life. So you can put on your headphones and immerse yourself in a book while you are exercising, walking your dog, doing your laundry, doing the dishes, or cooking. And a lot of people find that to be very helpful, especially at the beginning of their reading journey. I found audiobooks incredibly helpful at the beginning of my reading journey. It got me back into the spirit of reading without having to sit down and block out the noise of the outside world, which can be an intimidating part of sitting down with a physical book when you are new to reading or haven't read in a long time. Once you've decided what format you're going to read in, now comes what I think is one of the hardest parts, and that is picking which book you're going to read. I know when I read, and this is still something that happens even, 500 books into my reading journey, I often feel like there's pressure to read a specific type of book, whether it's something that is trending and really popular or something that is smart, that's going to make me look well read. I often feel pressure in those aspects. Now, a lot of that is put upon myself by myself and not necessarily an external pressure. However, that can be really hard to get past. That can be a really tough obstacle to push beyond. And I think it's really important to get what you should be reading out of your mind right away. Immediately focus in on what you want to read. I think it's really important to ask yourself this question, to really sit with it and decide that before you start picking up a book and before you start buying books. Because if you're reading a book that you don't enjoy or that you don't want to be reading, it will take you so long and you won't enjoy your experience at all. Figure out what you're passionate about, what type of tropes you like, what type of genres you're into, and pick books in those arenas to focus your energy on. There is a book for every passion, every interest under the sun, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. There is a book out there for you. And sort of in the same vein, allow yourself to DNF a book. Allowing yourself to not finish a book that you are not enjoying can be really hard, but it is so freeing to look at a book and say, you know what? I'm not getting any joy out of this. I'm not having a good time. It's boring. Whatever is making you feel like you don't want to finish it, don't finish it. And pick up something else that you will enjoy. Because as soon as you start reading books that you're not enjoying and forcing yourself to get through to the end, you're not going to want to make reading a priority in your life. And you honestly have to want to make reading a priority if you want to become a consistent reader. And lastly, it's really important that you read at your own pace. Reading is not a competitive sport. While someone else may be able to read that book in one sitting, it may take you a couple of weeks or a month to read that book, and that's okay. Reading is about self-discovery. Reading is about self-edification, and it doesn't have to be on someone else's timetable. It doesn't have to be on someone else's schedule or at someone else's pace. This is a very singular hobby where you get to be selfish and you get to make the rules as to how it works for you. Now, once you've decided what format and what you're going to read, it's time to sit down and read. And this is probably the second most difficult part of the process, finding the time. So often I hear that from my friends and family when I tell them I read a lot, when I tell them I make content about reading, they say, oh, I wish I had the time to read. And the truth is they do have the time to read. They just don't prioritize reading in their lives. And a lot of people get a little bit defensive when they hear that. What you want to make time for, you will make time for. And if you are just starting to read or just getting back into reading, you may have to put in a little extra effort to make reading a consistent part of your day. Just like any other habit, you have to sort of train yourself to become a reader. And this was something that was really difficult for me in the beginning, and sometimes still is really difficult. That's how I get myself into a reading slump. It's not necessarily that I can't find anything to read. It's that I don't want to make the time to read. I don't want to shut down my whole life so I can sit and read. I'd rather spend the time on my phone or chatting or going out or doing anything but reading. Some tips that I have if you do want to make reading a priority is that you might want to set a timer and schedule in your reading time. This is something that I did early on and sometimes still do when I'm finding that I'm not reading as much. I will schedule a time to set a timer and I will sit and read. I'll put my phone into do not disturb mode. I actually have a special mode on my phone that's called reading, and it locks all of my apps for me. During the time that I'm reading, I'll set a timer and I will read for that specific amount of time, or I'll say I'm going to sit down and I'm going to sit down here until I read 50 pages, 100 pages, whatever my goal is for that day. It sounds a little restrictive, it sounds a little crazy, but reading is a hobby where you sort of have to block out the distractions and the noise. It's not the same as scrolling on Instagram where you can have the TV going in the background and a million things can be happening around you. Reading is something that you have to focus on and you have to really train yourself to focus sometimes, especially in today's world. Focus is honestly a very hot commodity. Swapping your screen time with reading time is another thing that you can try. I've seen a lot of people doing this on TikTok. So if you had 3 hours of screen time yesterday, today you have 3 hours of reading time. This is a fun little way you can challenge yourself. You can also use habit trackers or different apps that send you reminders to read. I know that there are apps like Fable where it sort of sends you a notification and says, hey, by the way, you haven't read anything today. Maybe you should sit down and read, which can be a nice little nudge if you tend to get distracted or are forgetful or are not so good with time management. One of the ways to read consistently is finding a format in a book that you enjoy. We already talked in depth about those, but that's really, really important because when you actually enjoy what you're reading, you're going to want to make the time to read. Once you've started reading and you've learned how to dedicate time to reading, it's become a consistent hobby. You might want to dive a little further into what you're reading and the way you're reading. And that is where these extra supplies that I talked about earlier come in. Things like pens and highlighters, tabs and sticky notes, book trackers, journals. That's where all of this comes in. I'm going to break them down very quickly. If this is something you're interested in, or maybe you've already started reading and maybe you want something a little bit more from your reading than just the words on the page. And that's sort of where tabbing and annotating and tracking and writing reviews comes in. And all of these, again, are optional. If this isn't something that appeals to you, then skip it. Pick and choose what you like and leave the rest. When it comes to annotating and tabbing your books, there is no surefire method. There's no specific way to do it. It's really doing whatever works for you. This is one of the first books that I ever tabbed. It was before I wrote in my books, and it has so many different tabs in it. There is no rhyme or reason for the color scheme. I just thought they were cute colors, and I just tabbed everything that resonated with me, whether it was a quote, whether it was something that made me feel sad, whether it was something that I wanted to look back on and remember. It's just, I love looking back at the books that I've tabbed and opening it to a tab and just reading what I found important, what I liked about that page. I didn't write anything in this book. It was before I started writing in the book, but it was one of the first times that I truly felt immersed in a book in a way that I had never experienced before. I really attribute that to my annotating, to my tabbing, because I was thinking more about what I was reading. Some people are really super organized with the way that they annotate and tab. They will have color coordination for every type of thought. You know, blue will be for sad moments, red for romantic, but and they'll have tabs that match the book, which I try to do sometimes. You know, honestly, most of the time it's just whatever the heck I feel, that's where a tab goes. Same with annotating. There's no fast and hard rule about how you have to annotate your books. You can use a pen, you can use a pencil, you can use a highlighter, you can write on a sticky note and then put it into the book. You can use a journal that has nothing to do with the book and write your notes in that. You can write on a notes app on your phone. If taking notes and if annotating your thoughts help you process the book better, help you analyze or dive deeper into a text, then do that. But if you're finding yourself anxious while tabbing or annotating, as I said, skip it. It is not for everyone, and it's not for every book. This is a nonfiction memoir that really resonated with me, and so that's why I decided to annotate this. I've also annotated really silly romance books that had me laughing the whole time. There's really no rhyme or reason. Some books I annotate and tab, and some I don't. And there's no rhyme or reason to how I do it. Now, if you are the type of person who wants to set up a whole system and who wants to put a key for how you're tabbing in the front of your book, then you can definitely do that. And I will link some really great videos that I've watched about annotating from creators that I really enjoy and love and respect. And you can see what their process is because mine is kind of all over the place. The next two sort of go hand in hand, and it is writing reviews and tracking your reading habits. Writing book reviews can feel really daunting because I think a lot of people in their minds think that it has to be like a book report or an essay like you did in school, but it's really not that scary. Writing a book review is really just summarizing the way the book made you feel or the themes that were presented in the book that made you think and how they correlated throughout the book. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be a book report or an essay. Again, if that's something you enjoy, if you're really analytical and you get really down into the nitty gritty and you care about the color of the drapes and what they symbolize, then maybe you will write an essay or a book report for your review. Or maybe you want to become an ARC reader, which is someone who reviews books before they were released so that other readers can understand what they're getting into. You may want to post more analytical reviews. Or if it's just something you're doing for yourself so you can remember what you read, you can just post a couple of lines about how the book made you feel. It really, again, is so catered to you and what feeds you and what gratifies you and makes you feel excited about the book that you just read. If you don't care about writing reviews, don't write reviews. And you also don't have to post reviews. You can write a review on your notes app or in your journal or on your planner or wherever you're writing down your thoughts about the book. You can write a review in the back of your own book if that's something you're interested in. It doesn't have to be something that you post on an app or on social media for other people to see. It can be just for yourself so you can look back and think, that's what I thought about when I read this book. However, if you do want to post on social media, there are several apps that you can use to track your books. Again, this is really going to depend on what your style is and the way that you want to track. The main three apps are Goodreads, Storygraph, and Fable. These are the three apps that I use personally. You can track your progress throughout the book. You can write notes as you go through the book. And of course, you can post reviews. And also you can see other people's reviews and pretty much anything else under the sun that you want to track about your reading habits. Other ways that you can track your reading is through personal journals. There are many reading trackers that you can purchase on Etsy and other websites. I also use Notion. I'll put some screenshots of my Notion as well as my reading journal. I like to track my books in many different ways. This is just something that I find fun. I like doing admin work and I find the process of tracking my books relaxing. And so I track it on a couple different apps. I also use Notion and I also have a reading journal that I use on my iPad. And I'll put screenshots of all of those here and you can decide what works best for you. I also sometimes use a physical notebook to write notes in while I'm reading. I kind of do a little bit of everything. I'm still in the process of figuring out what works best for me. And this is something that can take years to perfect, but it's not a race and it's not a competition. This is a journey and the journey is all about you and what you want, and your opinions and your thoughts and your ideas might change throughout the years and you can change your habits right along with it. So now you are a reader. You've picked a book. You read it, you annotated inside the margins, you tabbed the pages, you wrote a review, and you tracked your book as read on a reading app. What now? Now is a time where you can think about growing your library and how that's going to look for you, because it does look different for everyone. As you can see, I have a pretty modest library. I have a bunch of unread books here and then my read books on my bookshelf, and I try to spend as little money as possible. It's actually a point of pride with me that I have thrifted about 90% of my book collection. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to keep your costs down when you are building your library. Now, for some people, a library is not important. They will only read on their Kindle or via audiobooks or borrow books from the library. They don't like to have treasures or trophies, as we in the book community will call it. For some people, build bookshelf is not really a priority or important to them, and that is completely valid. You don't have to have a bookshelf to show off the books you've read or want to read to be a reader. This is just something that is sort of an extra if you are into that. For me, I like to have physical books to read and I like to thrift. That is a hobby of mine, and so often I will pick up books that I see that I'm interested in while I'm thrifting. I also receive books from publishers and authors sometimes, and so my collection has grown and grown over the last couple of years. If you're interested in building your book collection but don't want to spend a ton of money, because books are super expensive now, especially in Canada, definitely not sustainable if you are reading multiple books a year. So here are a very quick overview of how to get some free and low cost books. Again, you can pick and choose what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Of course, my number one tip is going to be get yourself a library card or multiple library cards. A library card is going to be a lifesaver if you don't have a budget and you want to start reading, because it is free and everyone can get a library card. You can pick up physical books at the library, and most libraries have online programs where you can also borrow ebooks and audiobooks for free. You can also find many library programs online where you can pay a low one-time fee and have access to their online library as well. Another free resource is, of course, little free libraries. Sometimes you'll see a little box of books on the side of the road. Yes, you can use those. Anyone can use those. You can bring books to them. You can take books from them. It's such a great resource to those who don't have access to the library in their community, who want a little something extra. Maybe you just want like a little surprise that day and you're not sure what you're going to read and you're going to go to your little library and pick it out. It's also great for unhauling books. So if you want to get rid of some of the books in your library, bring them to a little free library is so great, and it's such a great thing to do. It really benefits the community around you. Another great way to get access to so many free books is to keep an eye out for Stuff Your Kindle or Stuff Your e-reader events. These are taking place all over the internet all the time. In the springtime, there's like dozens of these events happening. They are usually based on genre, so they'll have a romance Stuff Your Kindle, a dark romance, a horror, a cozy mystery, and you can find so many books from so many indie authors that you might never have come across during some of these events, and you have access to hundreds, if not thousands, of free books during these events where you can get free ebooks, and there is even free audiobook days, Stuff Your Earbuds, I think they're usually called. Also getting access to advanced reader copies, which are free copies of a book that a publisher or an author will send you in exchange for a review. And you don't have to have much of a following at all to gain access to these. When I got my first advanced reader copy, I think I had 20 followers on TikTok. It is a very low threshold for getting approved for these. Now, of course, some of the more popular authors you're going to have a bigger following for, but you don't necessarily have to have a social media following. It's more about your review platform. So if you're on Goodreads and you post consistent review on Goodreads, you can still get approved for some pretty large and popular authors. The best website for this is NetGalley. You will probably hear people talking about it if you've been in the bookish community at all. You just sign up with an email and you input your Goodreads account or your Storygraph account, whatever you use to track, or even your Amazon account. And you can start requesting books from some of the most popular authors. You can also get onto influencer and PR teams from publishers and authors, especially indie authors. They are all over Instagram and TikTok. They're often looking for ARC readers who will read their book in exchange for a review. So if you really enjoy a specific author, especially an indie author, be sure to follow their social medias and look out for announcements and things of that nature. And you can do the same thing with publishers or PR firms. I am part of 2 influencer programs currently. I have been sent dozens of books from them, and it is so much fun to receive a book mail and to open a package with a brand new book. And I highly recommend signing up for these programs. Again, I don't have a huge follower count. I think I had maybe 1,000 followers on TikTok when I first got into this program. So, it wasn't a lot, but it is just so much fun, and it's such a cool opportunity to like this insider access and get a book before it's even released and be able to read it and tell your friends about it or your followers about it. And really, really quick, if you want to get books at a lower cost, you can try your local secondhand or thrift stores. You can also try going to places like TJ Maxx or Marshalls or Winners in Canada. You can also look online at Book Outlet. There's also Facebook Marketplace, which I found has been a gem for finding books that you are looking for specifically. And my last little place to find books is actually book swaps. And now this is something that you can do yourself with your friends, where you can just host a book swap where everyone brings books that they finished reading or want to unhaul, and you can exchange them. Or you can look on Facebook Marketplace and see if anyone in your area is hosting a book swap. I, a couple of years ago, saw that some girls in my area were hosting a book swap, and I went and I brought a bunch of books, and I was able to take home like 4 or 5 books that I was so excited about. And I was also able to unhaul some of my books, and everyone left with a couple books, and all the leftover books were donated to local charities in the area. It was a really cool experience, and I definitely want to try and organize something like this myself one day. So that is everything I have for you. There is no right way. There's no one way to become a reader or to be a reader. All that you really need is a passion, a desire, a want to read, and a book. And you are a reader. And I hope that this video helps with maybe some motivation, some encouragement if you are feeling overwhelmed or feeling like you're not enough or like you're not doing it the right way, because reading is such a solitary hobby, and the way you read and what you're reading only has to make sense to you. So I encourage you to pick up a book today. I think reading is such a wonderful way to spend your time, to enhance your creativity, to find self-discovery and acceptance and build empathy and just get lost in your imagination. And I want everyone to read. And so I hope that this helped you grow your desire to read and motivated you to pick up a book today. If this helped you at all, like this video and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.